All right, great. So it looks like we have some good participation here. All right, so some big news to cover today. We'll turn it over to James. We obviously had a big release yesterday, so we want to talk kind of high level or as detailed as we want to go on what was in that release, why it's important. After that, I don't know that we'll have much in terms of demo. I think Barbara, I think we had talked about last week, so a demo from you guys, but I think you guys aren't ready maybe this week. Maybe we're looking to defer that maybe to next week, so that's fine as well. So we'll kind of just do open floor for any questions, demos, topics of discussion. And then high level, I'll talk quickly about what's the output of some of the working sessions we've had this week to really drive the priority for upcoming development on the project. And we'll kind of cover that really high level because the team hasn't had time to really break down that those high level epic kind of initiative level concepts or buckets of work. So we'll talk generally about that and then we'll kind of wrap from there. How's that sound to everybody? Good, great.
Sounds good.
Mr. Zetlin then on the release, on the keys.
Hello everybody. So we released. Can you guys see the release tag? I need a yes from somebody. Can you see my shared screen? Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was like, can you see the release? Well, since you didn't do very much announcing except for like 4 cryptic posts on Twitter, then maybe you were just looking right at Git. We have released PWA Studio version 2.0.0. Now, this is a long time coming. In the interest of transparency, I should say that we intended to do this release months ago. Partly because we didn't want this release to be a gigantic fanfare. We simply wanted to issue a version of PWA Studio that was a major release that you could set your NPM dependencies and new projects on, and that was fully compatible with the release Magento 2.3.0 that came out at the same time. Again, in the interest of transparency, what held us up was that it's very important to us that PWA Studio be as compatible with the other innovations in the Magento space as possible. And because of the configuration of our cloud environments, we had to make sure that a PWA Studio app could be deployed not only on the custom Node.js headless systems that the experts on this call feel comfortable with, but also on the Magento Enterprise Cloud. And one of the constraints of that is that it's not going to be able to run a Node.js server at scale. So part of the delayed release, even though we felt somewhat feature complete on the Venia side, was to take advantage of the promise of Upward, which already existed, and re-implement it as a PHP script that through a custom Magento module replaces the current front end. And that works today in the professional cloud. In fact, we are about to redirect our demo URL to use that professional cloud instance so you can see how the PWA Venia can perform identically on a totally different server architecture. It's a great demonstration of the portability of our PWA architecture. So that's done. And with the final support from that, we have what we consider to be a release that is ready to start semantically versioning and supporting in its first iteration. And we're extremely happy about that. As I mentioned on Twitter, if you're already using PWA Studio and you've been keeping track of it, as is true for most people on this call, then most of these features and new additions are not a surprise to you. They've been merged in, they've been heavily regressed and tested, and the release point was chosen after we took some time off from merging in new features. But what is significant to you is that with semantic versioning, we are now obeying the semantic versioning constraints. And that means that if we issue any change to the public APIs that you use in PWA Studio, the methods in the build pack plugins, the methods in the Peregrine components and the behaviors of such, or any of the publicly exposed methods of Venia components, then that means that we issue a full major release. So PWA Studio 3.0.0, and it may come out quickly. And if you were accustomed to the versioning patterns of Magento itself, that may seem a little disorienting because of the major release seeming to imply that you're going to have to do a major change. And that's not really the case. We're going to do a major release for any breaking change. So it's basically just an indication that there will be some code intervention necessary to keep your code working. So a major release is simply a signal of that. And because we're using proper dependency management, not just in Composer now, but also in NPM, you can easily choose simply not to let that flow in by using just the default NPM semver specifier, the caret range, caret 2.0.0, which guarantees that you can accept all minor and patch releases automatically from 2.0, and you can upgrade to 3.0 if it comes out, when it comes out, and 4.0 and 17.0 when you're good and ready. And that's the major release behavior. For anything that is additive to existing APIs but does not modify any existing methods, which would be able to flow into your app even if you don't take advantage immediately of the new functionality, it would flow in without breakage. That would be a minor release. So we would release PWA Studio 2.1.0, 2.2.0. And lastly, for patches or hot fixes, which don't add public API, but may correct an unexpected behavior or add a performance improvement or fix a crash, those would be patch releases, which is the last decimal point, 2.0.1, 2.0.2, 2.0.3, etc. And you may see this occurring as fast follows because there is additional functionality that we've been waiting excitedly to start to integrate, but we wanted to have this 2.0.0 release be stable. So that's the major change that you'll experience if you're somebody on this call who's been using this code and working on it. But just as a broader kind of announcement, 2.0.0 is the version of PWA Studio that officially supports Upward in your production systems, which compared to the sort of alpha and beta versions of PWA Studio that we released back in early to mid to Q3 of 2018, the Upward technology supports complete isolation from the Magento instance, connected to it only through an environment configuration which specifies a URL. So we're starting to really use the service location concept. And in addition to Upward, there is a tremendous amount of improved developer experience, a great degree of additional performance enhancement, and most happily, there is a full checkout and a really delightful and full-featured experience in the Venia example storefront. And that's due not just to some of the amazing contributions by new members of our core engineering team, but also from the stars of our community contributors, many of whom are on this call, who've contributed things like a fantastic auto-completed search experience, an amazing account management and traversal experience, a great addition of one of the fundamentals of catalog browsing, pagination through categories, checkout enhancements, and things of that nature. And we are immensely grateful and intend to call out and exhibit and emphasize your contributions wherever and whenever we can. Now, the place to consume the information about the 2.0 release, apart from just me talking about it right now, and I hope everyone's taking copious notes, is to go to the places where you would normally find the release of a software library, which in many ways is what PWA Studio's packages are, as libraries. So in GitHub, the releases section is going to show you the release object, which contains the changelog associated with the Git tag that we pushed. And there's a great deal of good information in here, links to issues that still exist, links to pull requests that we merged, and summaries of the documentation updates. This document is designed not just for developers to consume some of the more detailed stuff, but also for business users and high-level project managers, et cetera, to be able to just read some bullet points about the important things we did that impact your timeline, your business, and the features of the PWA. So this is one place to see everything, but you might notice that the contents of this release object are identical to the contents of the new changelog, which we keep up to date. And changelog is a conventional document that you're all familiar with that we're going to keep up to date with hotfixes and patches, and this list will kind of continue. And the release object will be populated with the contents of the most recent changelog. Another place to see all of this great information is on pwastudio.io, which links to the current documentation, and will have up-to-date and now stable and semantically versioned descriptions of a standard setup for core contribution, the Venia sample data installation process, some of the brand new amazing features like Braintree direct checkout integration. Thank you to Andy Terranova, who almost single-handedly added that to us. And some of the more detailed component specifications, which have some sort of UX description to them, which have some description of their behaviors, and internally have exposed public APIs, which any of your code editors, if they have support for detection of TypeScript or JavaScript definitions, should be auto-completing for you and helping you to get things going. Another place that you can see the results of our work is in the NPM package manager. Now, if you go to, for instance, npmjs.com package and then use the @Magento namespace where we're putting all of our stuff, and you go to, say, I don't know, PWA build pack, which would be a dev dependency that you'd import in any independent project, then you can see that we have release 2.0.0 online. Now, we try to centralize the documentation, so where you might expect a full README like in GitHub, we have you redirected to the documentation site, and this is just to keep things very consistent across the board. But not only the package PWA build pack, but also the package Peregrine, which we should specify is not yet full in functionality, but we're iterating on it very fast, and the package Venia, which you may end up using because its modular capabilities allow you to import individual Venia components into your product, as I demonstrated on an earlier call. And all of these are live, as well as, the implementation of our JavaScript reference implementation of Upward, which is a Node.js server which obeys Upward specified documents, and the Upward specification itself, which is useful not just as a piece of documentation, for which it is extensive, but also as a built-in test suite, so that if you are doing a heroic effort and implementing an Upward implementation on a new technology platform like Python, Ruby, or .NET, you can use the specification script in here to test and make sure that your server's behavior is compliant. All of these are available now and are now present in the, I don't know what saying that so long. Oh, yay! We might be getting a little bit of a, we might be getting hugged to death here in a couple of places. We'll let you know. But all of these are now available to install via the classic npm install or yarn add package manager client functionality. And once those are installed, those package managers will start to behave a little differently because of the semantic versioning now being majorly released. You'll see those package managers bringing in patches and even minor releases automatically. And you have really pinpoint control over that through the use of a semantic versioning string. So again, for developer facing, the semantic versioning is kind of the major change and improvement that you're going to see. And we also, just for the purposes of everyone who wants to get some great sort of rolling updates of what we're doing and how it's coming out, we have the release object, and that's for the consumption not only of you guys, but for your managers and for the project managers and product people who want to use PWA Studio. We're very excited about it. Again, we're probably going to follow up with follow-on releases, but they're going to be semantically versioned. And any questions about it, any reports of issues with it, please let us know both here and in the community Slack, or just, slide into my Menchies on Twitter if you want to do that. All right. Thank you very much. Questions?
All right, great. Thanks,
right
James.
Now? Sure.
Okay, so yeah, if there are any questions? Do we have any questions? Any comments?
I'll just comment with a congratulations. Looks really good.
Thank you, Rowan.
Thanks,
Rowan, can you point your camera down a little bit? Come
I
on,
mean,
I want to see the T-shirt.
it's as
Oh,
the
you're not
kids
wearing it.
say.
Okay.
Yeah, no, no, no. There we go.
Oh, yes, you
There we go.
are. Yes.
Yeah, we've, as the kids say, in a big mood.
Current mood. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rowan.
Okay, so next on our agenda was just kind of open floor. I think we covered most of our demo topics leading up to the release last week. I don't know if there's anything from anyone that's on the call, any open questions, discussions that we want to have. Kind of just completely open floor for any of those topics.
I'm happy to demo product options since I didn't get to last week.
Oh, there we go.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Let's
Sounds
do it.
good.
All right, cool. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm gonna just click. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so card options fairly straightforward. I've just got 3 pre-populated products here, which have 1, 2, and 3 options respectively. So yeah, it pulls in options just like the product full detail page does. Uses the product options component, and we can pick any of these guys into whatever we want. Update the cart. Get a nice little modal that keeps us from clicking anything in there while it's doing its work, and change the options there. So yeah, all fairly straightforward. The one thing to note is that because quantity already exists in the cart in the Redux store, when a product only retrieves the quantity, we don't do an extra GraphQL query. We just get the quantity that's in there and then do a query after that to update the cart.
Oh, that's cool. We're reusing the same loading indicator from elsewhere in the app, right?
Right, yeah. I didn't know when I was first working with this that the loading indicator is pretty neat. It just takes in text as children, so you can put whatever message you want in there.
Yes, I think that's our first instance of loading text that's custom to the view, which is cool.
Yeah, so that was very neat. That's really about it. There's also a new utility method in there that takes care of appending those product options to the payload to make sure that there's reusability there between the add to cart function and the update cart function, because there's quite a bit of logic there that I think should need to be reused.
Yeah, there's a lot of array work and stuff going on in there, if I remember correctly. So that's good to have that in one place.
All right.
Yeah, and that's been merged, right? So that's
Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any questions, other comments there? Yeah. All right. So then quickly, I guess to wrap up here is a relatively short update. The team went through this week and really we sat down and tried to map out all of the work that we need to do over the next 30, 60, 90 days and also some longer term work so we could really flesh out our roadmap for this year. I'd say at a high level, coming up for the team, our focus is mostly around things that Zetlin kind of already indicated and Jimmy has talked about with building out Peregrine as a concept and the fully fledged component library. Our focus also will be on Venya and continuing our effort on Venya and what that means for Venya being a storefront versus a theme, which is also a new topic that we've put into our docs that James Calcabian has launched into docs. So more effort around that. And then the third, I think, highest priority for us right now is the concept of extensibility and what that means and enabling extensions for PWA Studio. So as we continue to answer some of the open questions we have around those topics, you'll see in our repository in our board, right? We'll create epics and stories that relate to these topics and relate to those buckets of work. So if you're interested in kind of the direction we're headed in, just stay tuned to our board. Of course, we'll keep everyone up to date during this meeting on how things are progressing against those topics. But I'd say at a high level, those are our priorities for immediate and upcoming work.
Right. I know that a lot of you guys have been asking for a long time when we were finally going to get to fleshing out this Peregrine concept, of actually being a library of components that are worth using and what that's going to look like, because we've been pretty much focused exclusively on Venia this whole time. All new work's been going into Venia as a proof of concept here. So we're basically finally ready to really start translating stuff from Venia into Peregrine, and we're going to have some vision documentation on what exactly that process looks like, what the differences are between a Venia component and a Peregrine component. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to for people to get involved at the component level, and not just working on specific features, right? But like really getting involved with Peregrine for the first time. And then also, the other part of that, right, is we're going to start looking at what it takes to make a more Luma-like experience for a storefront, right? And so whether that's turning Venia into something that's more easily configurable, or whether that's something entirely separate, we'll see what comes out of our design and UX department on that. But those two things are like the primary focus for the next few months here. So.
The ghost of the room is Jimmy. Everyone, by the way, he's not on the camera. But
oh, am I not in the picture? Oh, that's perfect then.
Yeah.
Anything to add there, James?
No. Jimmy's got exactly the right of it. We're excited to now that React Hooks is out, which is really well timed. We're excited to see just how much easier it makes the integration with any Magento specific configuration or project structure or extensibility, like very, very easy one-liners. That's going to enable a lot of great stuff, and I'm proud of us for waiting. We could have created a great deal of Peregrine API, which we would have then had to make big changes to. And I've been commenting that as folks who build an ecosystem, we have to be a little bit more careful about introducing lots of innovations, because there's this pressure for all of you guys to begin building projects on what we've made, and we don't want to shift the platform around you. So we're now ready, and we're excited to do it.
All right. Any questions here, comments before we wrap? Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Easy peasy. So if there's any other discussion warning around it, feel free to hit up any of the team in the community Slack. And other than that, I guess we will see you all next week.
Woo!
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.